Outlaw Law is brought to you by Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law. Your law firm for life.
Welcome back into the Outlaw Lawyers. Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer, Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. They're the managing partners there, practicing attorneys here in the great state of North Carolina. Also joining us from Whitaker and Hamer's Morehead City office, Cassandra Nicholas, and we are talking legal topics. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate. There are offices located for Whitaker and Hamer practically everywhere: Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay, Varina, Gastonia, and as we mentioned, Cassandra joining us from Morehead City. Now, if you've got a legal situation you're facing, you can always call the firm. 800-659-1186 will get you in touch with Whitaker and Hamer. Leave your contact information, briefly what the call is about, and again, an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. That number again, 800-659-1186, and you can always email a question to the show, questions@theoutlawlawyer.com. We'll answer them on a future broadcast. Josh?
All right. So we were talking about how the media exploded with accounts of folks being shot, murdered, hurt, accidentally ending up on someone's property. And so that got us talking about stand your ground laws. And these were real controversial. I mean, a lot of states already had them, but I remember a couple of years back, the Florida one came up, that kind of thing. Cassandra, what are some of the ones you've seen, some of the incidents that came up in the media?
So the one you mentioned previously about the basketball rolling into a neighbor's yard, it was a 6-year-old that was shot and lived, but that one hit closer to home because it's a North Carolina case. Yeah. And then the gentleman was on the run. They did catch him in Florida, though, thankfully. That's the one I've been watching.
He honestly doesn't sound that gentle, Cassandra, to me.
Right?
Personally.
Yeah.
The two that got really national coverage was the young African-American man who went to the wrong house to pick up his sister, and he was shot through the door. I don't even remember what state. Was that New York? I can't even remember what state that was now. It wasn't New York.
That's the thing. That's the crazy thing, man. It starts blending together.
The New York one was the two cheerleaders who were out in the country and they pulled up in the wrong driveway and they didn't even get out of the car.
Missouri was Ralph Yarl was Missouri.
That was Missouri?
Yes. Ralph Yarl was Missouri.
And there was another. There was definitely 4 that were kind of floating around in the
cheerleaders
news.
Were Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was one in rural New York where they just pulled into the driveway and the guy shot.
That was the kids' party. That was the kids in the party, and they pulled into the driveway and
because he shot them from his house into the car.
Yep, that's right. So
yeah, and so I think everybody survived except that last one. I think she passed she was dead when they got
passenger shot. Yep.
Yeah. So all these.
But as far as stand your ground, like these are such anomalies because I don't see how any of these would fall into a state's stand your ground law.
Yeah, I don't, the media brought that up.
And again, it's important. We're kind of applying North Carolina's version of that to these other states, right? So, but yeah, I think by virtue, but how else, what other framework do you talk about them in, right?
Well, I think I haven't followed up, but I think everybody's been charged, right? All the folks who've done the shooting so far have been charged, and the stand your ground law comes in as like a self-defense claim, right? So it's a defense to a charge of assault or murder or whatever you got charged with in your respective state.
And to give listeners a little bit of groundwork, I know a lot of people are really common or familiar with stand your ground as a concept, but in North Carolina, so it's a defense that allows use of force in defense of self or others if reasonable. So that's pretty wishy-washy as far as like a defense goes.
Yeah, reasonable is always going to be, when you get into these situations, the average reasonable person, your response has to be reasonable to the threat that you're perceiving, right? It can't be an unreasonable, and all these, I think, if we go through them, are unreasonable uses of force. The one the media seems to be paying the most attention to is the young African-American male. And I guess it was Missouri. Is that what you said, Joe?
Yeah, Missouri.
Yeah. So he came to the door. No words were exchanged. I mean, the early, we'll get more facts as we get deeper into this, but the early reports are like no words were really exchanged. This young man was just ringing the doorbell. He was at the wrong house. And then the guy shot him twice through the door. And if those are the facts that we get, I'm sure this was an 87-year-old man. It sounds like maybe race played a factor from the early reports. I'm sure in his mind, he was very scared, but was that reasonable? It would seem that that's not reasonable at all.
Yeah, yes. And that's,
that one
yes, unreasonable.
seemed to take the longest to charge, too, because they weren't sure.
Well, there are degrees, right? Like all of these things bad, right? Like I don't think any of this is reasonable, but there still are, like, you talk about the individual who shot the cheerleaders. I mean, that's probably the most cut and dry. I'm not saying that all of these aren't cut and dry, but that's like, I mean, that was I think the girl got into the wrong car, realized it, got out, immediately went off, tried to get away, and the guy like literally pursued them to the car, started shooting at them. So I think that's on a sliding scale of unreasonableness. I think that one goes, the most unreasonable. But these others, you're right, man. Like, how is it a reasonable response? How can you say that you were met with a threat of, because again, we talked about self-defense, right? And we talked about the force, the amount of force being reasonable, and shooting someone like that, deadly force, there's an even higher bar for that to be permissible, or for that to be something that you can, shoot someone and then make that defense. And it's kind of an equivalent force, right? Like an imminent threat of like death or bodily harm there. And how do you make the argument that someone just being at your door, not posing any threat, ringing the doorbell, how can you say it rises to that level?
Well, I don't think you can.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think some states have a presumption, like once someone's in your house, you can presume, as long as they're not law enforcement or like a bail bond, as long as it's not somebody who has the authority to be there.
Or even you can get to trickier, murkier areas where maybe they're not in your house, but they're trying to force entry into your house. Like there are situations, and it's not like it's always an easy thing, right? It's not like always a cut and dry thing. And I don't envy some of the folks that have to own these closer ones. Not saying that any of these are close, but there are ones that are close that are difficult to call. And we always come back to that balance, right? Like the balance of your need to protect yourself. Like there's just, it's tough to land on what is truly reasonable in those close calls sometimes.
The one in New York where the girl was shot in the car in the driveway, that guy didn't come out of his house at all. So, I mean, I don't remember, I remember he called his attorney, the cops were there.
Yeah, I want to say, I'm not super overly familiar with that, but I want to say that, and again, not that this isn't like a sufficient defense by any means, but I think his defense, in quotes, was they were like revving the car. They were outside revving. It wasn't like they just came up, realized it was wrong, and pulled out. They were out there like revving the car. They may have been honking. Again, it's not like, hey, shoot me type of activity. But I think that they're kind of in a remote area, right? And I think he was, again, it sucks, man. It's terrible. It's a tragedy for these folks. No one should expect for that to happen to them just for pulling into the wrong place. Like these kids they're obviously not. Again, we don't know 100% as a fact, but from everything we've heard, they're not there just trying to intimidate some poor old man. They think they're somewhere else for a party, and they're just cutting up, man. They're just being kids. And
well, you always have the cases where someone's intoxicated, and then they try to go in like the wrong house, and they get in, right, and then they get. I've seen that happen a lot just in national news. They get shot and killed, and there's no charges because they've gotten in the house.
Yeah, they're in the house. Yeah, and that's one of those where like you get like. You can get that, right? Like you can understand that.
But, I think the facts change too. If I had told Joseph, like, I intend to kill you, and then I pull up in his driveway, that's different, right?
Yep.
I've announced my intentions to murder him, and now I'm at his house.
Yes, for sure.
So, stand your ground law is like Cassandra said, it's a self-defense, right? You plead it against charges. And I think all these folks will get charged, and unless some like crazy facts come up, I just can't. You mentioned
that fact pattern where you threatened to kill me, which is we can all see that, right? We can see you doing that. But you had the kid in New Jersey, Zachary Latham. That was he's actually been tried and found not guilty, and that was that situation where that guy was an influencer. I don't know if you guys saw this one, and the neighbors. They had a dispute that was like this long dispute, and they pulled up on him, and he filmed the whole encounter's filmed, and they come out aggressively and like clearly there to like try to cause harm. And I believe he stabbed one or more of them and ended up in one of them dying. He got charged with second-degree manslaughter, but he got off on the self-defense charge.
And they had the film though.
They had the film. Yeah, they had the film of it. So
I don't know how I didn't hear about that one.
I saw that one because it's I think it popped up on the old TikTok, the edited video of the folks pull, and it's clear like they pull in
that level of
pull in a truck and get out, and like they obviously mean business, and they're telling them several times like don't come on my property, get it like, and they're about like it's going down, right? Like
I'm I'm doing air quotes here. I'm not a tough guy by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm not.
More.
I don't know, man. I think you underestimate how not tough some of the guys are out there.
But if you stab me, I'm gonna finish the job.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna let you stab me.
Yeah, if you get one stab in, like it's not like, oh, you stabbed me. Okay, all right, you win. Let me get out of here.
You read about that in like London, and somebody will go on like a stabbing spree and kill like 7 people. And I always wonder how that happened. You know, like
I think. Oh man. I don't know, man. I'm not going to do a trial run stabbing of you so we can test this theory
I guess if you stab me in the back.
I think you get stabbed and it messes with you. I've heard that it'll mess with you.
Well, it's not fun, I would imagine.
It'll throw you off a little bit. It'll knock you back.
Well, I mean, I would imagine there's a fear for life. There's adrenaline. And yeah, I can see how you could have plenty of energy to.
Oh, you like to think like if someone stabs me, I'm going to Chuck Norris roundhouse kick this person in the face. But, I don't know, man. You never know.
I've always assumed from birth you get one roundhouse kick. It's just in you. Like when like you said, when the adrenaline starts pumping,
it's just like that.
You've got one.
Bam.
And I haven't used.
I think you got to practice it. I think you need to be at your house practicing because I think you don't want that to go bad on you.
God gives you one from day one. You're born with your one.
I don't want to test my roundhouse flex, like my reflex to do that. I just don't want to get stabbed. I'm gonna not try to not get stabbed when I leave.
I guarantee you, if I try to roundhouse kick someone, like I'm going down. That'll do more damage than the stabbing.
They'll start laughing and I'm not gonna kill this guy with a knife anymore. On
a very serious note, make sure you stretch before you do that roundhouse kick. Make sure you're ready.
Yeah, can you stop stabbing me long enough? I need to do some lunges.
I'm about to roundhouse kick you in the face.
Oh my God, I'm gonna roundhouse kick you so hard.
All right, the Outlaw Lawyers roundhouse kicking into the break. Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer, Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm, managing partners there, practicing attorneys here in North Carolina. Cassandra Nicholas, also an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer, joining us from the Morehead City office. Again, if you've got a legal situation that you are facing and you've got questions, you can get your answers from Whitaker and Hamer. Call 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. Leave your contact information, briefly what the call is about, and an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And you can always email your questions to the program, questions@theoutlawlawyer.com, and we'll answer those on a future broadcast. Taking a short break, back right after this.